Chapter 15. Everyone else in the company was occupied with some task. No one would notice. And yet, what if they did notice? My intentions would be obvious, and all chance of completing my mission would be lost. I turned toward the door, hesitated, turned back, started for the door again, and encountered Sander sweeping from the tiring room, dressed as Hamlet's mother. "How do I look?" he asked anxiously, pushing at his voluminous wig. Far from calm myself, I gave him a cursory look up and down. "Well enough, I was." "Wait, your sleeve's coming off." "Pin it on, would you?" "Yes, very well," I said irritably. The task required both hands, and I glanced about, wondering what to do with the playbook. "Here." I handed it to Sander. "Make haste," he begged. "I'm due on the stage." "I'm trying," I snapped, fumbling with the pins. "Why don't they just sew these on? You can change the dress about this way, put different sleeves on." "Have you got it?" "Almost." There was a flourish of trumpets above the stage. "It'll have to do. There's my cue." He started for the stage entrance. "The book!" I whispered urgently. He shoved it into my hands and dashed for the doorway, tripped himself up in his hem, recovered, hoisted the skirts in a very unladylike fashion, and burst through the curtain onto the stage.
"Ah, Gertrude," the king said. "So glad you could join us."
The audience guffawed at this spontaneous addition to the script. The king then launched into a speech that promised to be lengthy. Time to go, I thought. Suddenly, the king broke off, his arm upraised as though frozen in place. I froze too, aware that something was amiss but not quite sure what. A few snickers arose from the audience. The king cast a perturbed glance in my direction, and I realized he had forgotten his line. I yanked the book open. Before I could locate the proper passages, Laertes closed the breach.
"Sorry to interrupt, my lord, but I beg your leave and favor to return to France."
I looked about anxiously, certain that someone would swoop down to snatch the book from my incompetent hands. But everyone was too busy to notice. If I had had the sense that God gave sheep, I would have made my escape at that moment. But the king had another attack of forgetfulness. This time, I had the book open to the place. "Take thy fair hour," I called out, too loudly, drawing another snicker from the audience. The king snatched up the cue and ran with it. Behind his back, Sander made a gesture of approval at me. I couldn't help smiling. Ah, well, I thought, I can just as easily stay and help out here and still slip away before the finish of the play. When the scene was over, Sander came to where I stood. "How did I do?" "Whist," I said. "You'll make me lose my place." "It wouldn't be the first time," he teased. "Come now, truly, how was I?" "You were magnificent," I said dryly. "You fairly lit up the stage." He delivered a most unqueenly swat to my arm. "You dolt." "Ouch! Will you go fiddle with your pins or something and let me do my job?" "All right then. It's plain I'll get no useful criticism from you. You don't want criticism, you want praise." "Suppose I do? It would scarcely kill you." His voice had lost some of its jesting tone. "What do you care what I think? I thought we were friends." Oh, I thought of how my words had stung him the day before. I dropped my gaze to the script, as though it might provide my next line. But it was of no help. Just then, the rear door of the playhouse flew open, and Nick burst in, dishevelled and panting. "Am I late?" he gasped. "By about half an act," Sander said. Nick glared at him. "What are you doing in my costume?" "Playing your part, actually." "Well, take it off." When Sander made no move to comply, Nick tugged at the bodice. "Did you hear me, cook? Get out of my costume." "Soft," I said. "You'll be heard out there." Go eat hay, horse. He turned back to Sander. Do I have to shake you out of it? You're in no shape to go on, Sander said calmly. You've got a bit of beard for one thing, and from the smell of your breath, I'd say a bit of beer as well. I'll beard you, Nick growled. He yanked at the bodice, pulling loose the hooks at the side. Sander stumbled backward and tripped on the hem. His head struck the edge of the stage doorway with an audible thump. I had been doing foolish things with great frequency the past few days, and most of my life for that matter. And now I did another. I swung the heavy-bound book into the small of Nick's back. He let out a grunt of pain and turned on me like a baited bear turning on the hounds. He lashed out at me, and the blow would have caught me full in the face had I not been so adept at ducking. Instead, it glanced off the top of my pate. Before he could swing again, he was seized from behind by Jack the cannoneer. "What's going on here?" Jack demanded in a loud whisper. Nick shook loose from him. "He's trying to steal my part." Jack scowled at him. "You, eh? I knew you was up to no good." Sander got to his feet, rubbing the back of his head. "It's me he's accusing, Jack. Nick, if you're not here, somebody has to go on for you. You know that." Mr. Armin hurried up.
What are you boys doing? Your clamour carried all the way to the tiring room. Nick, where have you been?
"I overslept," Nick said sullenly.
Until Nona's? He looked the boy over distastefully. Go home. You're obviously not fit to perform. We'll discuss your fine later.
"I've nothing to pay a fine with. I lost it all at dice."
We'll take it out of your future wages then, if there are any. Go on now. Mr. Armin waved a hand at us. Back to work, boys. You're doing well, Sander. You too, Widge.
Though it was small enough praise, it took me off guard. I was as unaccustomed to praise as I was to having a friend or being one. The pleasant feeling it gave me was unaccustomed too, and gave me a small hint of what the players must experience when the audience applauded their efforts. For the first time, Jack noticed that I was holding the playbook. He snatched it from my hands. "What are you doing with that?" "Mr. Hemmings gave it to me." "Well, I'm taking it back. I don't trust you." "But you can't," I started to protest. Sander pulled me away. "Let it be. No point in making another commotion. But that was me job. Don't worry. You'll have it back soon enough." With a grin, he whispered, "Jack can scarcely read his own name." I made no reply. There was no way I could tell him how important that book was to me, or why. As I headed for the tiring room, I cursed myself for having hesitated and lost my best chance to hand the book of the play over to Falconer. I would have to keep him waiting yet a while, and he was not the sort who would relish it. Nor, I thought, was he the sort, when I finally did deliver, to praise me for a job well done.